How does the concept of the U.S. debt limit come about? In simple terms, the debt limit is a spending allowance that Congress, which nominally represents the American people, sets for the government. The concept was originally designed to provide the government with a larger fiscal autonomy, not to limit its spending. The concept of the debt limit started in 1917, during the First World War. Congress approved the debt limit in order to streamline fiscal allocations, allowing the federal government to spend within its allowance without needing to seek congressional approval for every expenditure. Much like the credit limit set by a bank, spend freely within the limit. The actual intent was to improve spending efficiency rather than restrict expenditure. However, it is well understood that there's a certain limit for anyone who borrows money. Up until the Reagan administration in the 80s, the government generally kept strict control over fiscal deficits and debt scales. However, due to a slew of factors such as the U.S.'s recovery from the 70s and 80s stagnation, the impact of Japanese goods on U.S. manufacturing, and the heightening Cold War, Reagan had to adopt aggressive tax cuts to stimulate the economy, while significantly increasing defense spending, thus incurring massive debts. Reagan, who initially thought this may affect his re-election, found out that the key to winning re-election was to increase fiscal deficits to stimulate the economy. The resulting federal debt was left for his successors to handle. Since Reagan, all U.S. presidents have shown a strong inclination to increase debt. George W. Bush launched the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, Obama dealt with the 2008 financial crisis, and Trump aggressively cut taxes. In short, each president found various reasons to significantly increase their debts. Even during the Clinton administration, which achieved fiscal surpluses, there was still a considerable increase in the total scale of the U.S. debt. By 2020, in order to cope with the centennial pandemic, both the Trump and Biden administrations enacted groundbreaking fiscal stimuli worth trillions of dollars, leading U.S. debt scales and fiscal deficits to reach record highs. In this process, the U.S. government and Congress act much like the management and board of a company. The management, for their short-term goals and personal gains, tend to employ aggressive strategies like increasing liabilities. This doesn't align with the board, who represent shareholder interests and seek long-term stable returns under controllable risks. This misalignment is referred to as the principal agent dilemma in business management. To mitigate these risks, the board generally votes on significant issues, like taking on debts or directly sets a borrowing limit for the company management. The U.S. debt ceiling serves the same purpose. However, the management and the board often collude and put on a show about the debt ceiling to deceive small shareholders. After all, many professional managers are members of the board or share the same interest with the board. The U.S. Congress and government have performed this act perfectly. The negotiation over the U.S. debt ceiling is essentially a political performance for the American people and the world at large. The long-established system of setting a debt ceiling for U.S. Treasury bonds is more nominal than substantial. Since the U.S. dollar was decoupled from gold in 1971, the U.S. debt ceiling has been raised over 70 times, averaging once every 2 years. The latest adjustment was made 2 years ago in 2021 when the U.S. Congress raised the debt limit to its current level of $31.4 trillion, compared to the original limit of $115 set in 1917. The debt ceiling has increased a staggering 2,700 times. If a measure supposedly restraining the government's debt behaviors can easily be raised, then what's the point of setting this measure in the first place? The answer lies in political struggles, or more specifically, it's about how the two main political parties in the U.S. utilize the moral high ground of the debt ceiling to redraw their territories.